Kutasich is Chelek Yud Zayin Tazria Gimel Lilunishmis Rabbi Yosef Ben Yamin Ben Reb Menashe Kaltman. A sicha, a beautiful, beautiful sicha about the idea of Tzara'as, the tumah of Tzara'as. We know that it's not just a physical thing, it's not a physical blemish on the skin, but it's something that represents something spiritual. And over here we're going to talk about the tumah, the negative energy of Tzara'as, and what is the antidote to stop this tumah from spreading. And along the way, we're going to learn the power of Shabbat candles, the mitzvah of Neder Shabbos Kodesh. In a way, it is greater than any other mitzvah. Sif Aleph, from Pasuk, Kol Yemei Asher HaNega Bo Yitma Goimar. All the days that the nega, that the Tzara'as is upon him, he is tamei. Bodod Yeshev Michutz L'Machan Meishava, he should sit alone, isolated. His dwelling is outside of the camp. Learned men up from this pasuk, it is learned as Eich der Moishav with the Mitzayra gefinzich is tamei. Also the dwelling where the Mitzayra finds himself is tamei, which means that if the Mitzayra is in his house, then everything that's in his house becomes tamei as well. Then the Mitzayra geht around the Beis Chavere. What happens if the Mitzayra walked into someone else's house? Zog die Mishnah. There's a Mishnah in Masechta Negoim. Kelim miyat meim. The Tanakhama says the kelim become the furniture, the vessels in the house become tamei immediately, as soon as he walks in. Rabbi Yehuda says, Im shah kedei adlakas haner. Only if he waited there, if he spent time in there, the amount of time it takes to light a candle. There's various ways to understand this Mishnah, but the Mefarshim, some of the Mefarshim explain Das Rabbi Yehuda, the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. This is a case where the Mitzayra entered into the home of his friend without permission. Because if he enters the house with permission, even Rabbi Yehuda would accept, would agree that once he has permission to be there, that becomes his dwelling currently, and everything that's in that house becomes tamei. But if he went in without permission, we give the Balabais, the owner of the house, a time to send the Mitzayra out. But if he's there long enough, in the amount of time it takes to light a candle, and he didn't kick him out, then it becomes his dwelling. Because it means the fact that he wasn't kicked out means he has permission to be there. And therefore this becomes his dwelling, and the kelim, the vessels in the house, the furniture in the house becomes tamei. Why is this the amount of time? The amount of time it takes to light a candle. Why is this the designated amount of time? Very simple. Because it could be the owner of the house is busy. He's turning on the lights. And that's why he's not kicking the Mitzayra out of the house. But the Mitzayra is there without permission. So we wait the time it takes to kindle the lights. And once there's enough time to kindle the lights and he still doesn't kick him out, we know that he's okay with him being there, thus making this house the Moishav, the dwelling of the Mitzayra, and therefore everything within it becoming tamei. So this is a very simple Mishnah. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to be there with permission in order to spread the tumah to the things in the house, and we wait a few minutes, a few moments, to give the owner of the house the ability to kick the Mitzayra out in order, before we decide, before we know that he's there with permission, and to spread the tumah. In Teira is the Alts betachlis adiyuk. In Teira everything is 100% precise. Und davon was von zwischen verschiedene Sachen de welcher Balabais can sein Torut. And from the fact that from the various different occupations that could be distracting the owner, kleibt durch die Mishnah dafke de Tirde von Adlakas anir. The Mishnah chooses specifically the fact that he's involved with lighting a candle. Ubefrat as the Wert nicht gemeint Adlakas anir bepoil. Doesn't mean that he has to actually be lighting a candle. It means the amount of time it would take to light a candle. This is Mefurish and Pirush Arash, as the Rosh says very explicitly. That there's times that the person might be busy either with lighting a candle or with another utility. So it doesn't mean specifically that he's actually lighting a candle. It means he's busy doing something. But what's the amount of time? One second, noch mehr, additionally, die Zeiten Adlakas in der Shchiach nur wenn es ist finster. When would he actually be lighting a candle? That would be most common when it's dark outside. And the fact that we created, Chachamim designated this amount of time, is even if the Mitzvah is going into the other person's house during the daytime. As Mefarshim explain, this concept of Leiplug, Chachamim didn't differentiate. Once they designated a shear, an amount of time, they say this amount would apply whatever the case is, whether it's day or night, etc. Whether he's actually lighting a candle or he's doing other things, it's the amount of time that it would have taken him to light a candle. But since, despite the fact that he doesn't have to be actually lighting a candle, nevertheless the Chacham chose this as the meter, as the measuring stick of the amount of time kedei hadlakas aner is therefore moving from this. We understand as sufficient the meaning for hadlakas aner that there's a connection between the idea of lighting a candle midem was the Mishnah zog do with that which the Mishnah is saying as bis dem shir and the kelen should buy nishtame, that until this amount the vessels, the furniture in the house will not become tummy. So the Rebbe is saying like this: the Mishnah seems to be randomly choosing a household task. That if a person is busy doing something, such as lighting a candle, we give him the amount of time it takes, and then the mitzvah, then the tumah spreads. Says the Rebbe that everything is b'tachlis hadiyuk, everything is precise. If the Torah chooses hadlakas haner, it means that there's a unique connection between the idea of lighting a candle and stopping the spread of the tumas Tzara'as. Is mevarer the roof der tatin zayin ha'oros after Mishnah now. So the Rebbe introduces a biur, an explanation from the Rebbe's father, Rav Levi Yitzchak, from Likutei Levi Yitzchak on the Mishnah. And the Rebbe's father explains as follows: Bayis is Sfiras HaMalchus. The house represents the Sfiras HaMalchus. Unsibas Tumas Metzera. How could Malchus become Tameh? Mitzadistalkus Eira Chachma. When the light of Chachma is removed from Malchus, when Malchus is lacking the energy and the light of Chachma, there's an opening for Tumah. Parenthetically speaking, this is why is Mitzvah Chashuv Kameis. We know that Chacham teach us that one of the various different situations where a person could be alive but still be considered in a certain sense halachically like a mace. Ani, for example, a poor person's Chashuv Kameis. Mitzvah is Chashuv Kameis. Because life comes from Chachma. Chachma injects life. And if there's a lack of Chachma in Malchus, then there's a lack of life. Therefore, Chashuv Kameis. Going back to the Tumas Bayis, when the Riber calls man, the Balabayis is Torah mit Adlakas Aner, as long as the Balabayis is occupied with kindling the lights, which is a representation of the idea that he's trying to bring down the light of Chachma into Malchus. Their loss does not allow the spread of Tumas of the Tumah of the Mitzvah into the house. But once that time passes, he's not anymore busy with kindling the light, which means that he's not involved in bringing down Chachma into Malchus. Now Malchus is devoid of Chachma. Now the Tumah spreads. Now, this is similar to the idea that the way a Mitzvah could become Tahir is only through a Kohen. As the Pasuk says, V'huva el ha-Kohen, v'yotza ha-Kohen, it's actually done through the Kohen. V'al ha-Kohen is there, but says, Mamshech l'mein ha-Chacham k'mvur l'kut Torah. As the Likutei Torah explains, that the Kohen represents the one who draws down the Eira Chachma. So since the problem of Tzara'as is the lack of Eira Chachma, the Kohen is the one who draws down Eira Chachma. So the Rebbe's father is Alpi Kabbalah, or Alpi Chassidus, is connecting this idea of Adlakas Haner with the Tumas Tzara'as, that it's referring to the fact that as long as you're trying to bring Chachma into Malchus, this holds off the spread of Tumah. Once you're not doing that anymore, then the fact that Chachma, that Malchus is devoid of Chachma, this allows Tumah to spread. In Sif Gimel, we're going to introduce that this Ner that we're talking about is actually a Shabbos candle. Shabbos candles. The fact that we said that the Mitzvah could only make the house tummy after he is there for the amount of time it takes to light a candle. The question is asked, Philip the Balabais is von dann Adlakas Ner. Is it here nicht as a grace as Beschas Meise Gufen, it can hasten the Mitzvah risking von sein Bias. Lighting a candle is not such an involved task. So even if he's busy lighting the candle, he should be able at the same time to say to the Mitzvah to leave the house. I don't want my things to become tamei. Please leave. Why is it that the Adlakas Ner seems to be, the lighting of the candle seems to be so involved that it doesn't allow him to simultaneously ask the Mitzvah to leave? So the Mefarshim explain as the Shir the Adlakas Ner, Adlakas Ner the Beis Shimshi. Hadlakas Ner the Shabbos Kodesh. We're talking specifically about lighting of the candles of Friday night, right before Friday night, the candles for Shabbos. Und der Fahr kann nicht mit Mafsig sein, auf zu hasten der Mitzvah risking von Stub. And therefore he can't stop to ask the Mitzvah to leave because it's Friday afternoon. The time is late. He has to get everything done before Shabbos. He can't pause. He can't wait. And that's why we allow him to finish doing what he's doing before the tumah begins to spread. And since you need this amount of time on a Friday afternoon, so therefore the same amount of time was also applied to all the other days of the week because of Lei Plug. As we said before, the Chachamim sometimes they don't want to distinguish different days because it gets confusing. So since Friday you need to have this amount of time, so therefore any day of the week, any night of the week, the amount of time is Kedei Adlakas Haner. But what we see from over here is that we're talking that the origin of this designation of the amount of time is based on the Friday afternoon, the lighting of Shabbos candles. And according to what the Rebbe's father explains, as the Tam Ashir from Kedei Adlakas Ner, Israel Adlakas Ner, their lost Tumas HaMitzvah, the way the Rebbe's father explained is that as long as you're lighting the candle, this holds off this spread of the Tumas HaMitzvah. Therefore, you come in as their Keyach afnit their laws on Tumas Mitzvah is beikim misad Adlakas Haner de Beishimshi. This implies that the koyach that's fire, the candle, the candlelight has to hold off the spread of Tumas Mitzvah comes specifically or primarily from the Shabbos candles. Since the primary shear is based on the lighting of Friday night Shabbos candles, so therefore it must mean that when the Rebbe's father refers to the candle as being something that has the power to hold off Tumas Mitzvah, there's something unique about the Friday night Shabbos candles that hold off the Tumas Mitzvah. There's beer in them. And the explanation would be, as we know, the Mishnah is not talking about the Mitzvah himself becoming tummy. No, we're talking about the tumah that would spread into the house, into the vessels of the house. Und der Riber is das beike verbunden mit Adlakas Ner de Beis Shimshi. So this can explain the connection between the Friday night, the Shabbos candles. Yes, as the Neder Shabbos Kedesh teilen sich aus von andere Neders. The fact that Shabbos candles are unique. They distinguish themselves from other candles. Their mitvas and Yonam is Shalom bias, because the whole purpose of the Friday night candles is to bring peace into the house. They illuminate the home, so a person shouldn't stumble on a stone or on a piece of wood. They protect that no negative event should occur in the home. Und der Riber tun auf die Nedes in Bayis echt das, as die Tumme soll nicht nispast werden in Bayis. So these same candles could have the effect that the Tumme should not either spread in the home. So there's a very beautiful cause and effect. Nedes, Shabbos Kodesh specifically, have the power of Shalom Bayis, to bring peace into the house. Part of bringing peace into the house, into the home, is to hold off the Tumme from spreading into the house. So in Siv Gimel, we introduced the Neder Shabbos Kodesh, that Adlakas Haner is referring to Haner the Beis Shimshi, the Shabbos candles, and we explained that according to the Rebbe's father, this would mean that the Neder Shabbos Kodesh have a specific strength, have a specific power in holding off the Tumah, and the explanation is because they're in Shalom Bayis. In Siv Dalid, the Rebbe is going to ask the question, what is so unique about Shabbos candles? Seemingly, any light is going to stop someone from tripping in the house, stumbling in the house, and therefore bringing peace into the house. And the Rebbe is going to explain that Neder Shabbos Kodesh are unique to any other type of light that you would put on in the house. We could ask, the peace in the house seemingly is being accomplished through the physical light. Any lit candle, when is not near mitzvah, even if it's not the mitzvah of Shabbos candles, but like them by the kosher beitz of heaven, illuminates the house, and brings them to Shalom bayis and brings peace in the house. So what is the unique advantage of the Shabbos candles? Was when the Why are we saying that specifically the Shabbos candles have the power to bring peace into the house or to stop the opposite of peace, and therefore to stop the spread of tumah? Seemingly any candle, any light, you turn on a light switch, the light is on, you see where the stumbling blocks are, you don't stumble, so that you're happy, so there's peace and tranquility in the house. And why are the Shabbos candles so distinctly connected to the stop of the spread of the Mitzvah? The Rebbe says this is not true. Stam Lichtigkeit, nicht seindig verbunden mit einer Mitzvah. Just any light, if it's not connected to a mitzvah, is nicht tamid sicher, das wird sein asibe zu Shalom, is not always an assurance that it will lead to peace. And sometimes it's quite the contrary. In der Lichtigkeit des Eben Amal I mentioned, when the lights are on, you might see a person, or der Atnua und a Strich in a mention, or a mode, a trait, or a streak in a person, was bekennet verleiden, which you can't stand. Sometimes the light will actually bring the opposite of peace. Sometimes when the lights are off, you don't see the other person. You don't see what bothers you when you turn the lights on, and all of a sudden you see the whole person with everything that comes along with them, and it might be something that you're not happy about. So therefore, light by itself does not have the power to bring peace. The light that comes from a mitzvah, the light that comes from Torah, which the whole purpose of Torah is to bring peace into the world, is the but this is the truest most and surest most reason, was bringt zu Achdus and cause, was bringt zu Achdus and Shalom bayis, which leads to unity and peace in the house. So in Sif Dalet, the Rebbe introduces, in addition to what we said in Sif Gimel, that Shabbos candles bring Shalom bayis. He says specifically Shabbos candles, because not only do they bring light, they also have the power of a ner mitzvah. They also have the power of the fact that they're a mitzvah, and therefore they bring spiritual light with them, and therefore they are a guarantee to bring Shalom bayis. In Sif Hey, the Rebbe is going to say the opposite. He's going to say that Emes Taka, the Shabbos candles are ner mitzvah, but the Shabbos candles are also physical light, and therefore they have the power to impact the physical world. Masha'ink, in any other mitzvah, is spiritual light, but doesn't have the attribute of actually illuminating the physical world. So this will explain why the Shabbos candles have the power to not allow the spread of any tumah. A random tumah cannot be spread into the house, because you have Neder Shabbos Kedesh. They bring Shalom because they're a light and they're a mitzvah, and therefore they bring peace. But from the fact that this amount of time is brought in connection with the tumah of a mitzvah, is verstandig as Verhitung von der Tumah Chamura. So this is understood that the protection from this very severe type of tumah hat a shayches miyuchedes b'neder Shabbos Kedesh. Now, the idea that Shabbos candles could stop the spread of tumah it's very understood. It's the idea of Shalom, it's the idea of a mitzvah, and therefore it stops the spread of tumah. But we bring it in connection with tumas mitzvah, which is a very severe tumah. We'll bring it again later in the Sikha, how severe this tumah is. And therefore there must be something uniquely connected between Neder Shabbos Kedesh and tumas Tzara'as. But pastors kemen sagen, on a very basic level, you could say, einer von the sibis von Tzara'as is lashon hara, and einer von pilud levavos. One of the causes for Tzara'as is lashon hara, speaking negatively about another person, which causes divisiveness. Therefore, its rectification is through the Shabbos candles, which their characteristic is the peace in the house. So the Shalom bayis combats the Pirud Levavis. This is on a basic level. But to explain this on a deeper level, what is the deeper connection between Ner Shabbos Kodesh and Tumas Tzara'as? It's as follows. Wenn wir verstehen, beachtim das, was Chazal sagen, Haragil b'ner havyon leibanim tamid chacham. There's a saying of Chazal that someone who's very scrupulous with Ner, with lighting the candle, Ner Chanukah, Ner Shabbos, havyon leibanim tamid chacham will have sons that are Torah scholars. Taich Rashi, Chsiv Kiner Mitzvah V'Teirah says Ner Mitzvah is called a candle, Teirah is called light. Al Yedei Ner Mitzvah the Shabbos v'Chanukah. If you are careful in the candle of a mitzvah, such as Shabbos and Chanukah, Bo'er the Teirah, then they bring the light of Teirah in your house, that your children will be Talmidei Chachamim. From them is move on. As Chach Ner Mitzvah meant Yeder Mitzvah. From this we can derive that although Ner Mitzvah really refers to any mitzvah, every mitzvah is a candle. Because any mitzvah that a person does illuminates the person's life and illuminates the world around him. Von deswegen ist in dem Prat von einer Yisrin in the mitzvahs, was seinen euch in Gashmis verbunden mit der. But there's an advantage to those mitzvahs that are also physically candles. Because they express even more than a regular mitzvah the fact that this is a candle, that this is a luminary. By other mitzvahs, since the candle, the fact that the mitzvah is a candle is only really a spiritual light. You don't see a very revealed impact on the physicality of the world. Shaking about the mitzvahs, since their mitzvah is connected with the light of a physical candle and a physical light, the river is the pulle from the ruchnis the lichtigkeit ner mitzvah in an efen as he kommt begilu in gas Shalom. Therefore, the impact of this mitzvah is in a way that it actually affects the physical world. It actually, there's light in the physical world. So although in Seif Dalid we explained that the Maila of Ner Shabbos over a random light bulb, over any other candle, is the fact that it's a mitzvah. In Sif Hey, the Rebbe says the other way. He says that the Maila of Ner Shabbos, or Ner Chanukah at this point, over any other mitzvah, is that it's also a gashmistika candle. So the Ner Shabbos has two advantages. On the one hand, it's a mitzvah, so therefore it has the power to actually bring shalom, because kol atera nitna lase shalom ba'olam. But also it has a stronger power ba'olam in the physical world, because it is also actually illuminating the physical world. In Sivav, the Rabbi is going to bring another example where we see the power of something that is actually a candle, and because of that it has more power than other things around it. The mitzvah sein verstandig was the Gemara sagt, wegen dem Ner Maravi in Beis Hamikdash. This will explain what the Gemara says about the Ner Maravi. The Ner Maravi was this one candle, either was the last candle or the center candle, depends on which opinion. It says, it's a testimony to all the people of the world that the Shechina, the Eibishter's presence, rests amongst the Yidden. The nest that happened with the Ner Maravi, that it was always lit. So you would use it to light all the other candles because it was already lit, and then that would be the last one to clean out and relight, because once everything else was lit, it can go back to this one. But in other words, it stayed lit either 24 hours, or it stayed lit a lot more than the other candles, and therefore it was a nace, it was a miracle, it was something supernatural, and this was a proof, a testimony to the world that the Eibishter is dwelling amongst the Yidden. But there's a simple question. In Beis Hamikdash and doch geschehen asach nisim, many miracles occurred in Beis Hamikdash. Wie die Mishnah sagt, as the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, asar nisim nasal avosenu Beis Hamikdash. There were 10 nisim that occurred to our fathers in the Beis Hamikdash. Was is der Nest von Ner Maravi ausgeteilt von alle nisim? Verstav geeres given an Edush Ashchina Sheira Yisrael. So why is this nace of the Ner Maravi distinguished in the fact that specifically this one is the testimony to the world of the Shechina's presence? Nochmer, additionally, der Makam is in Hechel. Und dort gufen nicht in Ulam, there in the Mart, was heißt Kodesh, wo nicht jeder hat gekannt da reingehen. Where was the menorah located? It was in the Hechel, it was in the inside of the Beis Hamikdash. And not just in the inside, but in the Kodesh, in the innermost chamber, which was not accessible to the regular person. Da kegen von die Asara Nisim sind ich bin Atels und ständig Ba'azara. Of the other 10 Nisim, there were some that were in the Azara. Und zwischen sie was passiert in Yerushalayim chutz la Azara, and some that were happening in Yerushalayim outside of the Azara, and Isaiah rooms and doing lakel, which were much more known to the masses. Hein, wie sagt man, darf den Nest von der Maravi, was ich beseich HaKodesh, hat Ede gesagt, Leboy Elam, Shashchina Sheda B'Yisol. So how could you say that this nest that was all the way in the almost in the innermost chamber of the Beis Hamikdash should be a testimony to the outside world? Is there beer in them canal? But based on the above, the explanation is understood. Since you're talking about a spiritual light, but one that is coming into the physical world, therefore it had a stronger impact to illuminate the physical world more than the other miracles that happened in the Beis Hamikdash, because this is not only a nace, but it's a nace with a candle, with light that illuminates the physical world. When the Pharaoh Dafka der Nes beeinflusst, Edus Liboy Elam, therefore specifically this Nes was able to influence, to be a testimony to the people of the world, on their canon they should recognize Shashchina Sheda B'Yisrael. So let's go back to the Shabbos candles now. So according to this, we can understand that there's something unique about Shabbos candles. About the whole Torah, it said that the Torah was given for the purpose of bringing peace into this world. Through the entire Torah, you can bring peace into the world. But this is a metaphysical peace, one that's not necessarily tangible. But by the Shabbos candles, which the Shalom that they bring, the peace that they bring, is actually expressed in tangible, a real, practical Shalom bayis in the home. This in itself is a proof as by their mitzvah is the Shalom that by this mitzvah the Shalom in the world is stronger, because just like we see that the Shalom bayis is actually practical and real, in the physically real, so too the Shalom ba'ilam that's accomplished through Shabbos candles is actually one that impacts this world in a very real way. As the Maimer Kolater nicht nur Shalom ba'ilam wird gebracht in Rambam, behemsich zum Inyan von Shalom bayis, was wird aufgetan durch Nede Shabbos. And it's important to note that this statement that the Torah was given in order to bring Shalom into this world is brought by the Rambam in Hilches Chanukah, but with regards to the fact that Neder Shabbos brings Shalom bayis. So the Rambam himself in the Sefer of Halacha connects the Inyan of Kol HaTorah Nidin Shalom Ba'ilum specifically to Neder Shabbos. And we actually had a Sikha on this Chanukah time in Chelek Tesvav, where the Rebbe over there Taka speaks about the Mila of Neder Shabbos even over Neder Chanukah. The Neder Shabbos has all the Milas even over Neder Chanukah. The Asbari in them. And Sif Zayim, we're going to now go to the next level. In other words, we explained this concept, and basically what we explained was that we're talking about Neder, that Akidei Adlokas HaNeder is Neder Shabbos Kedush, and the Neder Shabbos Kedush has a very strong connection because the Tumah is in the bias, so the combat, the antidote to that is the Neder, which bring Shalom bias. Then we explained that they have a Maila because they're near Mitzvah, so they have a Maila over a regular light. Then we explained that they're also in Ner Gashmi, a physical light, and therefore they have a Maila over other mitzvahs. Because they also have Ner Gashmi, so they're impacting the physical world, and therefore we can understand that Dafkin Neder Shabbos Kodesh have the power to stop the spread of Tumas Mitzvah, even though Tumas Mitzvah is such a very severe Tumah, as will be mentioned later on in the Sikha. Nevertheless, Neder Shabbos Kodesh have the power to stop it. In Sif Zayin and on, we're now going to explain this on a deeper level, more on a level of Chassidus. To explain that the idea of Shalom Ba'olam is the idea to bring peace between the physicality and the spirituality of the world, between the Eibishter, between the Elokus that's in the world, and the worldliness that's concealing the Elokus. Is one of the meanings, one of the understandings of this statement, that the whole Torah was given for the purpose of peace in the world, is as follows. The true existence of the world is godliness. As the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, that without godliness, there's no world. So the whole world is really truly godliness. Das, was die Welt hat akiyum, is es durch dem, was der Rebbe beschäftigt, sie ständig, the fact that the world has an existence is because the Rebbe is constantly sustaining it in every single moment from nothingness to somethingness. But since this godly power is operating in a concealed manner, the world seems to be an independent entity. A person could think that this mansion has no leader, has no owner. This is the purpose and an accomplishment of the Ner Mitzvah V'Teir as of them was man lernen Teir, man is bekayim mitzvahs, through learning Teir and doing mitzvahs. This illuminates, this brings light into the existence of the world. In the dogma von Hitzitz Alav Bala Bira, in the example is that the Bala Bira peaks. He peeks in this mashal that but Avram Avinu, that he said, is it possible that there is no owner? Then the Medrash says, later the Medrash says that the owner peaked and he discovered, there has to be an owner. In other words, when there's zetem emes, as yesh manig lebirazu, so the purpose of Ner Mitzvah V'Teir is to see that yes, this mansion, the world, has an owner, until we're able to realize that the entire world is impossible to exist without the Eibishter. That's the meaning of these words. Das was Teda is nitna. The fact that the Teda was given to this world, to this lowest of all worlds, is to make peace. By making peace between the world and Hashem. So the Zen the Elam is nitna. We should recognize that the world is not opposed. Is that a contradiction to godliness? Und nochmals, ein Tachlis is zu sein adire leisbarach durch der Teire v'avida von Eden. The whole purpose of the world is to be a dwelling for Hashem through the Teire and the Avida of a Yid. So that's the idea of Shalom Ba'olam. The whole purpose, what does it mean that Teire was given to make peace into this world? In this world, to reveal the harmony between godliness and worldliness. That even though they seem to be contradictory, in truth, they are working together, and they are interdependent. And when we learn Torah and we do mitzvahs, we reveal how this world not only is not a contradiction to godliness, it is actually a vessel and a tool for godliness. Der mitzvahs move on. As in dem besteht euch die Meilen mechedes von der Shabbos Kodesh. So now, if that's what it really means, this must be expressed also in the midst of Neder Shabbos Kodesh. But as we explained in Knal Sivav, that Neder Shabbos Kodesh have the power of both the mitzvah and the physical light, and therefore they represent Shalom in the world. As the Inyan von Shalom Beilam der Zen as the Amitis HaMetzius von Welt is Elokus, wer durch Neder Shabbos Kodesh aufgetan noch mehr wie durch andere Mitzvahs. Therefore, Neder Shabbos Kodesh accomplished this peace even more than other mitzvahs. Wie steht in Zeh, ki ner mitzvah, my ner mitzvah, don ner the Shabbos. The Zeh says, when it says ner mitzvah v'teira which ner mitzvah is talking about? Ner of Shabbos. In ner Shabbos Kodesh, der Linie von ner mitzvah beleichen die Welt, mit mehr Tekev, da gab andere mitzvahs, afilu di, was eine verbunden mit ner Gashmi. Ner Shabbos Kodesh has the ability to bring Shalom Ba'olam more than any other mitzvah, even more than the other mitzvahs that are connected with light. So now we have a third level, so to speak. First we said that there's an inyan of a mitzvah. If it's just a regular candle, it's not necessarily going to bring shalom. But if it's a mitzvah, it has the power of Torah to bring shalom. Then we said out of all mitzvahs, those that actually bring physical light, such as Ner Shabbos, Ner Chanukah, the Ner Ma'aravi, have an advantage because they bring light into the physical world. Now in these brackets, the Rebbe points out that Ner Mitzvah, when the Zohar says, Ner Mitzvah, my Ner Mitzvah, done Ner de Shabbos, there's something unique about Ner Shabbos that even supersedes other candle-related mitzvahs, such as Ner Chanukah. Was Ner Shabbos tutuf steht der Lashon sheli kashel beitzu be'even. This is apparent. I mean, nothing is parenthetical, but this is going a little bit deeper into the concept that Neder Shabbos are connected with Shalom Ba'olam. because they create shalom bayis, they ultimately bring shalom ba'olam. And the Rebbe is pointing out that the lashon in Chazal is shelo yikoshel be'etzev be'evan. He shouldn't trip, he shouldn't stumble over a piece of wood or a stone. What's the diuk eitzev evan? What's the emphasis? A piece of wood or a stone? It could be a toy, something else that's on the floor that you won't stumble on. Now there mitzvah memaramis from pasuk oimrim le'etz aviata ule'even atili detani. Here there is a reference to the pasuk that people say to a piece of wood, "You're my father," or to a stone, "You gave birth to me," which is a reference to Avodah Zarah, that they worship the stone and the wood. As from the eitz or even ver gemacht and Avodah Zarah Rahman al-Islam, that the eitz of the heaven become an item of idol worship. And this is the accomplishment of the Shabbos candles. The mitzias von eitz and heaven mitzadatzvam. The wood and the stone, before they are illuminated by the Shabbos candles, could cause a person to stumble, to make a mistake, and say that this eitz or even, this piece of wood, this piece of stone, is an independent entity. An eigenem kayach has its own power. To the end degree that they would refer to a piece of wood as a father, or to the stone as a mother, which is an expression of Avodah Zarah. Durch die Lichtigkeit von Ner Shabbos Kedesh, was Ner Mitzvah und Pula von Shalom Beilam, wirken Beif Goli of Gashmi Yisraelim. But the Ner Shabbos Kedesh, which their Ner Mitzvah, not only are they a mitzvah, and not only are they a candle, but their whole purpose is for Shalom Beilam, wirken Beif Goli of Gashmi Yisraelim. They have a revealed impact on the physicality of the world. This also addresses the spiritual aspect of it, because through the Shabbos candles it becomes clear to the person that even the wood and the stone in the world is being led and controlled by the owner of the mansion, the Eibishter, and they have to be utilized for things of Kedusha, and this transforms the person's whole understanding of the physical world. So this is the Maila of Ner Shabbos Kodesh over even Ner Chanukah, for example, because the inyan of Ner Shabbos is Lasis Shalom Ba'olam. Ner Chanukah could also do it because it's a mitzvah and it's a light, but that's not its purpose. But Ner Shabbos, which the inyan of Ner Shabbos is for Shalom Bayis, it's the whole inyan is to create shalom. Therefore, it has the power more than any other mitzvah to create shalom ba'olam, to create peace in the world. And now we're going to go back to Tumas HaMetzora. Now we started Siv Zayin the Hasbara. So we went to the next level to say that we're dealing over here not just with actually the Tumas Metzora and the Ner Shabbos Kodesh. We're talking about the fact that the Ner Shabbos Kodesh are here to bring peace between the physicality of the world, the worldliness of the world, and the Elokus that sustains it. So now let's go back to the Metzora. Al Pika now let's move in the Tkashem Yuchat from the Tara from Tumas Metzora and Ner Shabbos Kodesh. So now we understand the connection between the Tara of the Metzora, the Tumas of the Metzora and Ner Shabbos Kodesh. Tumas Metzora is from the Tumas Achi Chamuros. Tumas Metzora is from the most severe Tumas. Was the far is by Metzora that didn't bother the Yeshim, which is why the Metzora has to be isolated and it has to be outside of all three camps of even of Machne Yisrael. Even other impure people cannot sit with him. The Orthodox Metzora is he has to be even outside of the camp of the other impure people. The says there is in ganzen Aris Machne de Kedusha, he is entirely removed from the camp of Kedusha of holiness. Under Tamadavar is, and the reason why is Tumas Metzora such a terrible Tumah? Well, euch der Chet was bringt to Tzara'as, Lashon Hara is sehr harb. Because the sin that brings to Tzara'as, which is Lashon Hara, is a very, very severe sin. The Mitva said, der führt Lashon Rambam, ledaber belikim v'kefnim beikir. In the Rambam, in the last halacha of Hilchas Tumas Tzara'as, the Rambam speaks about how terrible Lashon Hara is, and it starts out that Miriam Miriam, she spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu, she meant well, but then it goes from there and it leads to worse, and it leads to worse, and then it even leads the daber belikim v'kefrim beikir. If it starts with lashon hara, that you're saying something negative about another person, but it leads a person to speak out against the Eibishter and to deny the existence of the Eibishter. Which causes a person to totally tear himself away from the Eibishter. In other words, lashon hara is a very, very severe thing. It causes a person to be torn away from the Eibishter, and therefore this is a tumah chamura b'yoser. It's a very severe tumah. And therefore, in order to stop the spread of such a tumah, he says, only Shabbos candles can accomplish this. Because they have the strongest impact on the physical world. So much so that specifically Shabbos candles have the power to stop, which, as we explained on a deeper level, is a reference to Avodah Zarah. When they're fired, their losses, they need the tumah from Mitzvah, but if verbunden mit Ladaber belekim v'kefrim beikir. Therefore, Neder Shabbos Candles specifically have the power to stop the spread of this severe tumah. So if you go back to see how the Rebbe's father understood this Mishnah, what the Rebbe's father is saying is that the Adlakas Neiris, the Adlakas HaNeir is something that has the power to stop the spread of Tumah. And now to understand it, the way that Rabbi explained it to us, is that the idea of Tumah's Tzara'as is one of the most severe Tumahs, something that could lead to Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah is where the person loses the ability to recognize a Elokus. And he looks at something in Eitzer in heaven and he says, oh, this is a deity. And Adlakas Neder Shabbos Kodesh, the Shabbos candles, have the power, because they're a candle, and because they're a mitzvah, and because their idea is Las Shalom Ba'olam, Las Shalom in the bayis, and therefore Las Shalom Ba'olam, they have the power to stop this tumah and to make that it shouldn't spread. The person should not come to a point of Avodah Zarah, Rachmana litzlan. In Sif Yud, the Rabbi is going to take this a step further and is going to speak about the positive thing that the Kohen can do of Tzara'as HaMitzvah. Till now we were talking about stopping the spread. Now what do we want to do? We want to transform the Mitzvah to become a Torah. The Kohen can do this, and we're going to see this in Sif Yud. Leit wie der Tatach Nevar in seine Horus. As the Inyan for Adlakas HaNeir is al derech Tzara'as HaMitzvah durch ein Kohen. Canal Sif Beis. If you remember in Sif Beis, the Rebbe's father brought an example that the Kohen, his Inyan is to be Mamshech Malchus, and therefore the Kohen is the one who brings the Tumah, who brings the Tara of the Mitzvah, comparing it to the Adlakas HaNeir, which is also stopping the spread. So this idea can also be understood in our discussion. The power of Shabbos candles is not just that they stop the spread of Tumas Mitzvah, nor noch mehr sie haben bekoach zu machen as die Kelim bleiben toher von Tumas Mitzvah. They have the power that the Kelim should remain toher. You can look at it and say, okay, stop. The tumah doesn't spread. It's more than that. There's Kelim in this house that are potentially tamei, and the Adlakas HaNeir is keeping the Kelim toher. Ubedugma shalahem. If you're using it in the example of the Mitzvah, that they're becoming, that the Rebbe's father brought, the Tara is a compass of the Kohen. It becomes like the transformation of darkness to light. Then from the fact that he's isolated, which, as we said before in Siftes, represents the lowest of the low, that he has to be so far away, and anything to do with Kedusha, that Bodod Yeshiv Lemal Yusa becomes the positive aspect of Bodod Yeshiv, which means that the Eibishter is by himself. The Eibishter sits alone, representing the highest levels. Hein am levadod yishkein. The people, the Yidden are levadod, they're removed from the nations of the world. Betach bodod ein Yaakov. Another pasuk refers to the Yidden as they are isolated in a good way from the nations around them. Which is the ultimate bracha. So we have the Neder Shabbos Kodesh have the power to bring Tara to the Kelim of the house, which means they have the power to transform the Tumah into Tara, and even Bodod Yeshev, which was seen as a negative thing, could ultimately be transformed into something positive. Same thing is with regards to the galus, the darkness of this last generation. As durch dem Öfen der Shabbos Candles, the lights of Shabbos candles. We illuminate the darkness of galus. And to dismantle it, to get rid of the galus. More than that, not only we dismantle the galus, we come to the Geula Binyan Beis Hamikdash. And I will show you the candles of Yerushalayim, the lights of Yerushalayim. A time when the Eibishter will be the light of the world. Someone showed that the darkness of galus is transformed to light. And the darkness will be illuminated like the day. The night will be illuminated like the daytime. In Sif Yudalev, the Rebbe goes very practical and brings up again the mitzvah of Neder Shabbos Kodesh, the mitzvah to encourage all women and girls to light Shabbos candles. Now that we understand, now that we have such a deep, powerful insight into the power of Shabbos candles, that more than any other mitzvah, they have the power to bring Shalom into the house. They have the power to bring Shalom into the world. And they have the power to transform the darkness of Galus into light. We now understand how important it is to actually engage people with the mitzvah of lighting Shabbos candles. From Kolonal is verstandig. As in Zman, when der Cheshach von Welt ist, as a Greis und Gedicht, in this time when the darkness of the world is so great and so thick, is speziell wichtig, it is especially important, as jede idische Tochter, that every Jewish daughter, eich von Kreisen, wo die Töchter pflegen, bis jetzt anheben Menschen Licht noch sehr chassene. Even in those circles, that until now, the daughters would light Shabbos candles only after their marriage. Und bis dann jetzig mit der Mutters Lichtbändchen, and until their marriage, they would fulfill the mitzvah by through their mother lighting for them. So we have to change that. The gleich wie giel lechinuch. As soon as the girl reaches the age of chinuch, as men kenner masber sein die Bedeutung for Neder Shabbos Yom Tov, that she could be explained the significance of Shabbos candles, zol alein benchen licht, that every girl should herself light candles. In 145, the Rebbe says lahoyer v'gam zeikir, to make a point, a very primary point. The bayish me'ezeh siba shetiya eina emad likar neros. In a house where, for whatever reason, the mother is not lighting Shabbos candles, the divrei hakol tzricha abbas lahadlik, everyone would agree, all halachic authorities would agree, that the girl, the daughter, has to light candles, al kolpanim mishanas bas mitzvah, at least from the point of when she becomes bas mitzvah. Therefore, we have to make a major effort that people should know this, that if their mother, for some reason, is not lighting Shabbos candles, that they, especially after bas mitzvah, have a mitzvah to light Shabbos candles. And here's a very interesting point that Rebbe makes, that if the girls in the other frum homes around her are not lighting candles, it's much harder to get a 12, 13-year-old girl to light Shabbos candles if none of her friends are doing so. As you see very, very obviously. It's easy to understand. So therefore, another reason that all girls should light Shabbos candles is so that way, if chas v'shalom there's a case where the mother is not lighting Shabbos candles, at least the daughter is lighting Shabbos candles and fulfilling a mitzvah. Und die Lichtigkeit von der Shabbos mit der Brache, was sie wird machen auf dem, wird beleuchten ihr Leben. Going back to this Tochter that's lighting Shabbos candles, and the light of the Shabbos candles with the brache that she'll make on it will illuminate her life. As sie wird wissen und gedenken, she will know and she will remember. Wie sie sagten, der Brache, als der Eibishter ist der Malach HaOlam, that the Eibishter is the King of the universe. Und es kommt zu in der Sicherheit, and this adds to the assurance, as b'shas sie wird halten b'chasten haben, that when she will come to getting married, that by ihr sein Havaya l'chol ha'olam, the Eibishter will be the light of her world. Sie wird als hakeres habayis boyin und einstellen ihr huis later rotzen Havaya, that she'll be able, as the pillar of the house, to build and establish her home according to the will of Hashem, al yesei de atera v'amitzvah. So when the girl lights Shabbos candles, this it inculcates within her the recognition of the Eibishter as the king of the world. And then when she gets married and she has to build her own home, she has this very powerful, strong foundation, the that the Eibishter is the light of our world. And it's if you'd base, the Rebbe brings another very beautiful, practical reason why all Jewish daughters should light Shabbos candles. Through lighting Shabbos candles, you merit to have children and sons-in-law Then a Talmidei Chachamim. This is the Lashon Haragel B'Neir, Lashon in Gemara and Shabbos. Haragel B'Neir Avion Leibanim Talmidei Chachamim. And as Rashi explained, through the mitzvahs specifically of Shabbos candles, of Chanukah candles, you bring the light of Torah into your home, that your sons and your sons-in-law will be Talmidei Chachamim. Ubechein. So as follows. Another kiyorin. When it is given that say that as the Eltern of Mashlossen, they're going to for their tochter in the past. When the way it was that the parents would choose a shidduch, would decide the shidduch for the daughter. Is b'meila ich the ikir there's chus from the mutter's ner Shabbos. So what was most important was the merit of the mother's Shabbos candles as her tochter that her daughter should marry a Talmid Chacham. So if the mother lit Shabbos candles, her chus stood in her stead that she should find an edim, a Talmid Chacham for her daughter. Heintige Zeiten. Nowadays, when mitzad verschiedene sibis is der bepoil, zimi vil ye oder nit, as ba'ashidich farzich, ba'shlis bikir di tochter, when for whatever reasons, the reality on the ground, whether we like it or not, is that the shidduch is being decided by the daughter, fordert sich noch mehr, as the allein soll benchen licht, it's so much more important that she should light the Shabbos candles, und der ner mitzvah was wird sinden, and the Shabbos candle that she would light, that ihr geben dem schus, will give her the merit, Zizel Chasten haben for a Talmid Chacham, that she should marry a Talmid Chacham. Und heintige Zeiten, and nowadays, was a viel in Fruma Heiser, is man nicht allemal sicher, as die Eltern werden glauben, dass der Machletes bei der Tochter, wenn sie wird älter werden, that even in the frum homes, even religious homes, we're not always sure that the parents are going to have a final opinion for the daughter when she gets older. Darf man sich bamien mishtadel sein sich beyoser. We have to make great efforts as free wie möglich, that as early as possible. Das heißt, wie nur sie der grechtem gila chinuch as soon as she reaches the age of chinuch. Von adlakas ner Shabbos Kedesh, soll sie oneben benchen licht bechol erev Shabbos verev Yom Tov. She should begin to light candles every erev Shabbos and erev Yom Tov. It's a very fascinating and beautiful, practical thing. You want your daughter to have the schus, to be able to make the right decision of who to marry, and to marry a Talmid Chacham, then the earlier she starts lighting Shabbos candles, the earlier you inculcate within her this recognition of the light that it brings into the world, and the Shalom Bo'ilam, and the Shalom in the Bayis, and the V'hoya V'ayla Elam, the Eibishter, is the light of her world, and therefore when it comes the time to make the decision of who she's going to marry, the decision is she has the strength to make and the schus, to make the right decision. This also strengthens the promise of Torah. As the Torah, you'll be able to raise her for Torah, for Chuppah, and for good deeds. And she'll be able to marry a Talmid Chacham, a Torah scholar.